Hello, welcome to our webinar, Teacher Alternatives to the WEA and What Happens When You Opt Out of the Union. My name is Matthew Hayward and I'm the Outreach Director at the Freedom Foundation. The Freedom Foundation's mission is to advance individual liberty, free enterprise, and a transparent, accountable government. We are a 501c3 nonprofit founded 30 years ago in 1991 in Olympia, Washington. Over the years, we've worked on many issues ranging from school choice to tax reforms and property rights. Today, we almost exclusively deal with public employee unions. This isn't new to our organization. In 2007, our efforts led to Davenport versus the WEA, a lawsuit that went all the way to the United States Supreme Court, where the teachers were victorious. 7 years later, in 2014, the United States Supreme Court essentially ruled that partial public employees had right-to-work protections. I was hired shortly afterward to develop an outreach program. I learned a lot from talking with child care providers and healthcare providers. I would say one of the things that shocked me most to learn was that roughly 50% of the child care providers I spoke with had never signed a union membership form, never talked to a shop steward, and did not even know that they were members of unions. There's a big gap between having rights, knowing you have rights, and being able to exercise your rights. And tonight, Max Nelsen, coworker, who is our labor policy expert, is going to be sharing more with you about another Supreme Court decision, Janus v. AFSCME. Amy Laye, Director of Northwest Professional Educators, is going to be talking to you about liability insurance and some of the alternatives services available outside of the WEA. And Justin Grillo, President of Waterville Teachers Leadership Council, is going to be talking a little bit about local-only unions and what your options are outside of being represented by WEA. So I'm going to kick it over to Max to talk a little bit more about the 2008 Supreme Court decision.
Appreciate that, Matt. Thank you, everybody, for taking the time out of your evening to join us tonight and talk a little bit about educators' rights as individuals and as a group when it comes to union membership and some alternatives to workplace representation through the Washington Education Association. My name is Max Nelsen. I'm the Director of Labor Policy at the Freedom Foundation. I've been here for about 8 years. And during that time, I did a stint about 1.5 years with the Federal Labor Relations Authority. I'm a longtime Washingtonian, born here, grew up in the Kitsap County area, went to school out in Spokane, and now living and working here in our state capital in Olympia with my wife and son. So this is an issue that's near and dear to my heart, and that I've had the chance to work with quite a few public employees about over the last 8 years. I'll give you a little bit of context leading up to the U.S. Supreme Court's 2018 decision. Educators that have worked for some time in Washington State will know that for years, going back, to the original unionization of teachers in the 1970s in Washington State, that state law allowed and unions negotiated for mandatory union payment requirements. These provisions were included in union collective bargaining agreements and often required teachers to either join the union as members or, if they refused to join the union, pay an agency fee to the union that was by default the same amount as union dues. Some folks may be familiar with the right that teachers had at the time to object to union membership on religious grounds and pay an amount equivalent to union dues to a charity instead of to the union. That framework all changed dramatically when the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in 2018 in the Janus versus AFSCME decision that it was unconstitutional for public employees, including teachers and other school district employees, to be required to financially support a union as a condition of employment. And that case was brought by a social worker out of the state of Illinois who objected to being forced to financially support a union that he disagreed with. And Freedom Foundation had long shared that view and was of the mindset that compelling individual employees to financially support the advocacy of a private organization had free speech and First Amendment and civil rights implications. So the Freedom Foundation filed several briefs supporting Mark Janus in his petition before the U.S. Supreme Court, and the court ultimately ruled in his favor and held that states and public sector unions may no longer extract agency fees from non-consenting employees. And the court went even further and said that, quote, neither an agency fee nor any other payment to a union may be deducted from a non-member's wages, nor may any other attempt be made to collect such a payment unless the employee affirmatively consents to pay. So not only was it unconstitutional to require payment as a condition of employment, but unions now and public employers now have to receive affirmative consent from public employees before union dues may be withheld from their wages. And that's a critical distinction. But as a result, union membership and dues payment across the public sector, including here in Washington's public schools, is now entirely optional. Now, how does this apply a little bit more specifically for educators in Washington State? Most teachers in Washington and a great number of classified school employees are represented by the Washington Education Association, which is an affiliate of the National Education Association. The NEA, just to review a little, or I'm sorry, the WEA, just to review its internal structure a little bit, consists of several affiliate levels. And so when you, as a union represented teacher in Spokane or Olympia or Vancouver or where have you, when you pay dues to your local WEA affiliate, that money is not all staying at the local. Parts of that dues that you pay are being distributed to the higher level affiliates as well. So again, at the local level, there are several hundred local unions, typically designated, one per school district, and those are the entities that are going to do, in most cases, much of the heavy lifting in the day-to-day workplace representation in your districts and in your buildings. They range dramatically in size, depending, of course, on the size of the school districts. On the larger end of the scale, the Seattle Education Association collected about $3.1 million in revenue during the 2017 and 18 academic year, just to give you a sense of the size of some of the larger local affiliates. Above the locals, you have 22 regional uniserve councils. And that's the intermediate affiliate that exists between the local unions and the statewide Washington Education Association. Those also vary in size and can collect upwards of $1 million per year in revenue. Statewide level, of course, is WEA, with its headquarters located in Federal Way. Its revenue was about $41.3 million during the 2017 and 18 academic year. It had about 160 full-time employees on staff. Those are union employees, being not necessarily teachers or school workers, but full-time employees of the union, paid for with union dues. The executive director of WEA in that 17-18 academic year was paid $278,000 in salary. And then above the WEA, you have the National Education Association headquarters in Washington, D.C. And that collected about $375 million worth in union dues and fees during the 2019-20 academic year. It had about 700 paid officers and staff, about over 400 of whom were paid six figures. And the highest paid union staffer at the NEA is the union president, Lily Eskelsen Garcia, who was paid about over $400,000. So with that in mind, let's break down the WEA due structure a little bit. Many unions will charge dues based on a percentage of gross wages that their members are earned. That's not the way that the WEA structures its dues. Dues are set at basically at a flat rate as opposed to a percentage, but there are differing rates for varying membership categories. full-time, part-time, and classified, and so on. But within categories, the rates are set at a flat amount as opposed to a percentage. So, if you were to translate that into a percentage, dues as a percentage of income, the higher paid teachers are going to tend to provide a smaller percentage of their income in union dues than the lower paid, newer teachers would. During the 2018-19 academic year, total average dues for Washington teachers represented by NEA affiliates was about $1,100. But again, that varied based on the district and what uniserv you were in, and so on. Annual NEA dues for a full-time teacher are $200, and annual WEA dues for a full-time teacher are $551. The remaining amounts would be divided up between your local and the uniserv. In addition to union dues deductions, the Washington Education Association and the NEA have additional voluntary payroll deductions for political contributions. The Washington Education Association maintains a political committee, WEAPAC, WEA-PAC, and solicits member contributions to the PAC of $2.25 per month to be withheld from your wages, just like union dues. That money is specifically intended for and used for political contributions and expenditures in Washington state elections. And contributions are, and always have been, voluntary to that political committee. Similarly, the National Education Association maintains a political fund, the NEA Fund for Children in Public Education, and solicits contributions from members of $12 per year. And funds or donations to that fund are used primarily to make political contributions and expenditures in federal elections. Contributions to both are voluntary. Members can decline to contribute without losing their membership status or suffering any repercussions. But I think it's important to note that although NEA and WEA maintain these dedicated political funds, they do also rely in some part on dues money paid by members to finance their political activity and political contributions. Occasionally, the WEA will simply write checks to its PAC from its general fund, from using the money that it's collected from members in dues. It routinely will contribute to ballot initiative campaigns directly from its general fund, and won't route that money through its dedicated political fund. A recent example would be last year, the WEA contributed $150,000 from its general fund to the campaign, the ballot measure campaign, to require comprehensive sex education in Washington's public schools. And similarly, the NEA maintains a second political fund, the NEA Advocacy Fund, which it funds primarily with the general fund revenue that it collects from members' dues. And it is quite a bit larger in terms of revenue than the voluntarily funded Fund for Children in Public Education. And much of that money in the NEA Advocacy Fund is used on state and local elections around the country. Now, there are a number of reasons that educators might consider resigning their union membership in WEA. We've talked to quite a few teachers over the years, and really the reasons are as diverse as the individuals out there and individual opinions. But for a lot of people, political differences are at the top of the list. Unions generally, and WEA included, continue to stake out positions on political matters that extend often well beyond classroom concerns or the traditional workplace representation concerns that unions might focus on. And to some people, they find that very troubling, or at least at odds with their own personal political beliefs. Moral and religious concerns are another factor for other people. For example, there are some religious denominations, Seventh-day Adventists come to mind, who have formal teachings against their members just participating in secular membership organizations generally, not necessarily specifically objecting to unions, but just membership in secular organizations as a rule. And so we've worked with a number of folks who have religious or moral concerns about union membership and in resigning from WEA and other unions. Others may simply believe that the dues money that they are paying is not providing sufficient value, or they may feel that they're being overcharged for the services that the union is providing. And still other employees may have professional differences of opinion with the union's approach or tactics or how it decides to interact with the district. You know, and usually anytime there's a major or high profile strike, for instance, in Washington State, you know, we'll tend to get an uptick in calls and interest of people who are maybe a little uncomfortable with the more confrontational hardline approach of some of their local unions. But again, there's no right or wrong reason, there's no right or wrong answer, and for a lot of people, union membership continues to be something that they believe is right for them, and that's perfectly fine. If, however, you do have an interest in resigning from WEA or NEA and canceling dues deductions, there is a process to follow to do that. In short, you'd need to send a written resignation to the WEA headquarters in Cover Way. Membership is generally handled there, not by your local union or the Uniservs. And you can download the form necessary to resign your membership and cancel those dues deductions from a website that we've created to be an informational resource for public employees. And that's the WEA specific page is optouttoday.com, optouttoday.com/WEA. Now, it's important to note that the WEA's current membership form requires payment of dues for a full year. So you can submit your membership resignation and dues cancellation request at any time, but under the terms of this membership form, if you've previously signed one, the union will not stop the deductions from your wages, the dues deductions from your wages, until the start of the next academic year. If you have any problems or questions or run into any issues, the Freedom Foundation is here to help as a resource. Quite a few teachers have successfully resigned their membership in the, almost 3 years now since the Janus decision. So it's a process that you're not paving the road or blazing the trail here. It's been followed before. WEA has procedures in place and have been fairly good about honoring and processing those resignation requests as they should. But we do have a team of talented attorneys in-house and on staff here at the Freedom Foundation available to assist you in any interactions or difficulties that you may run into with the process of canceling your dues deductions. If you have any interest as well in connecting with others in your workplace or in your district that may have already resigned from WEA, please feel free to reach out to us and we'll try to put you in contact with someone in your district. It may feel like it depending on the dynamics in your building and your district, but chances are you're not the first person to do this. And so we're happy to play matchmaker and give you a chance to try to talk with other people that have gone before you. Couple things that it's important to identify about what changes if you opt out. Oh, excuse me. What changes if you resign your membership versus what doesn't change. And the rule of thumb is anything that relates to your conditions of employment, anything that's governed by the collective bargaining agreement with the district, will continue to apply and will continue to govern your employment. And so there won't be any changes to your wages, benefits, working conditions of employment. If it's provided by your employer, you'll continue to have access to it as a union non-member. The union will also remain legally obligated to represent you in grievances and contract administration disputes. Our state collective bargaining law governing teachers provides that once a union has been certified and recognized by the state as the exclusive bargaining representative of teachers or classified employees in a district, they are accepting the responsibility of representing all employees within the unit and can't discriminate against non-members or people who choose not to join the union. And the other item that doesn't change is that the union will still, continue to receive your contact information. They may still be able to communicate with you, and may continue to solicit membership in the future. What does change if you resign your membership is your ability to participate in internal union affairs. As a non-member, you would no longer be able to vote in union-administered elections, and that would include voting on contract ratification. You wouldn't be able to vote for union officers or serve on a union bargaining team or engage in any of the internal governance of the union. On the flip side, you can no longer be disciplined for violating union bylaws. There would be no official repercussions, for instance, for crossing a picket line in a strike, for example. You would no longer be eligible for any members-only benefits that the union may have arranged to provide to its members in good standing outside the parameters of any collective bargaining agreement that's been negotiated with the district. And that would include probably the most common item that comes up in discussions would be professional liability insurance. The National Education Association does maintain a policy in its own name, but that it provides as a benefit to any NEA members nationwide, including here in Washington State, and you would lose access to that as a non-member of the union. Now, historically, school districts in Washington have been required by state law to provide some minimum level of liability insurance protection to district employees. But there have been some recent changes to the way the School Employee Benefits Board operates, and so there's a little more uncertainty now about how school districts can go about providing liability insurance. So if you have questions about whether your district provides any coverage, I would recommend reaching out to your HR department and asking them directly and learning more from them that way. However, for folks who feel strongly about the need to maintain some kind of professional liability insurance in their own name, or who may be interested in other professional development opportunities outside the WEA ambit, there is an alternative organization, Northwest Professional Educators. It's been around for quite some time, and we are privileged to have with us on the call today Amy Laye, who heads up the Northwest Professional Educators. And I will pass it off to you, Amy, to discuss professional liability insurance that you guys offer and other benefits that you provide as an alternative to the WEA.
Good evening, and thank you for taking the time to join us tonight. As Max stated, I am Amy with Northwest Professional Educators. I am the Regional Membership Director here at NWPE. NWPE is a chapter of the Association of American Educators, and AAE has been working with and serving educators for over 25 years. As the largest non-union national professional educators organization, AAE takes a more modern approach to teacher representation and educational advocacy. AAE and NWPE offer its members direct access to legal services as part of the $2 million liability policy that you'll receive. That's double the amount that you're going to receive from other organizations. And that policy begins from the day that you sign up, as well as access to professional development, a grant and scholarship program, an amazing members only discount program, along with other great benefits for the cost of $16.50 a month. Now, I know that you heard Max earlier talk about what union dues cost and where that money goes, but for $198 a year, NWPE promotes professionalism, collaboration, and excellence without a partisan agenda. NWPE does not endorse political candidates, tell members how to vote, or spend money on partisan campaigns. Another great benefit is that liability policy that's in your name. It's not part of an umbrella policy that's tied to the district that you choose to teach in. If an incident occurs or you are subject to review panel prior to speaking with an attorney, NWPE gives you direct access to that liability policy, no matter what school, what district, or even what state you choose to teach in. You have that protection. And more importantly, you have access to an attorney at any time, along with a team of people there to support you. So I saw in the chat earlier, there was a question about being able to access an attorney or legal counsel on certain occasions, or that you're given a certain amount of free time each year. At NWPE, we have a legal team that is available to you at all times. So an email away or a phone call away to get a quick peace of mind or answer a quick question, NWPE is there to take care of that for you as a member. So if you're thinking that the cost represents the coverage, then let me just share with you a few of the comparisons that I have. NWPE is the only organization that guarantees its professional members an attorney for eligible employment rights issues such as evaluations, RIFs, non-renewals, suspensions, or terminations. A lawsuit against you by another teacher or in your school district may not, or probably is not, going to be covered by other organizations. At NWPE, we are here to protect you for your rights as an educator. NWPE also covers up to $35,000 in attorney fees for a lawsuit against you for injunctive relief, declaratory relief, or other non-monetary relief, such as a threat to your teaching license. Your union policy will not cover that. So these are just a few examples of the superior coverage that you get with NWPE that you will not get from other organizations. As educators, you make a lot of important decisions every day inside the classroom and out. You choose what car you drive based on what is best for your needs, your budget, and its safety features. You choose your place of worship based on its messages and how it serves you as an individual. You even choose where you buy your groceries based on the products they offer, the cost of those products, and the availability of those products. You should have the right to choose a professional education organization as well, one that fits your needs, represents you with its message, and the products that it provides. Our vision at AAE and NWPE is the teaching profession is student-oriented, well-respected, and personally fulfilled. And that's how we see all of our members. So this is your career and your passion, and I know that many of you have put a lot of time into this. And I just want you to know that you have options when it comes to how you protect your career and your education being. So I know there's lots of questions still in the chat box that I may have missed, and hopefully we can get to those, but I will turn it back over to Max, and we'll hopefully get to hear some more about your options.
Well, thank you, Amy. Appreciate your presentation. Everything that we've discussed so far relates to options that educators have as individuals regarding union membership. But there is one other item that we want to discuss tonight that talks about options that employees have as a group. Obviously, WEA is certainly the dominant union and the dominant model for collective bargaining and union representation in Washington public schools. But there are alternatives to that as well. We talked a little bit at the beginning about how WEA is structured, how it's affiliated with NEA, and there are of course multiple different levels of affiliates. But although most major unions that you've probably heard of or interacted with are structured that way, Teamsters or American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, or the SEIU, there is no law that says they have to be structured that way. And there are unions out there that function purely on a local basis, and that you could describe as independent unions. They're not affiliated with any of the major national labor organizations or AFL-CIO affiliates. There are a number of such organizations here in Washington State, both inside and in other areas, inside public schools and outside in other areas of public employment. But there are several small school districts that have, in recent years, broken ties, severed ties with the WEA and NEA, and formed their own local independent union. They still engage in collective bargaining with the district. They still have bargaining agreements that set wages, benefits, and working conditions. The difference is they're simply paying dues to their local organization and have complete control over how that organization runs and is operated. And there is no sending of money to Federal Way or Washington, D.C., and no broader agendas being supported or advanced. That's an intriguing option to some people, maybe not for others, but it's certainly an interesting option. The basic format for forming such an alternative is fairly straightforward. Any WEA affiliate out there that exists, well, the vast majority have been recognized and certified at some point by the state of Washington to represent employees, school employees in that district. But the State Public Employment Relations Commission administers our collective bargaining laws, which do provide a process for changing that union or decertifying an incumbent union and exclusive representative. And the process is fairly straightforward. You would need to get 30% of employees in the union represented bargaining unit, 30% of teachers in a district, to say we want to hold an election about whether we want to keep, our WEA affiliate or change to an alternate union or form our own independent union. And once that threshold of support has been reached, you'd petition the State Public Employment Relations Commission for an election. There's a limited windows of time that you can submit that petition and initiate that process. But once you gain the support, file the petition during an appropriate window, then the state would conduct an election in which a majority vote would determine whether to retain the current WEA affiliate or change to something different. And that is a navigable process, although it is, technically a legal proceeding. And the Freedom Foundation has worked with a number of groups over the years and helped them navigate that process successfully. One organization that followed this path about 8 years ago now is the Teachers in the Waterville School District over in Eastern Washington. And we are privileged to have with us tonight Justin Grillo, who's a public school teacher in the Waterville School District and president of their independent union, the Waterville Teachers Leadership Council. So Justin, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about your experience in Waterville, why you guys decided to break from WEA, and how it's worked out for you in the eight years since you struck out on your own.
All right, thank you. Sorry, my camera's not working. It's my wife's Mac, and it's not being friendly to me. This process, like you said, started about 8 years ago, and it started with a conversation about our mission statement for our school and why we existed as a school. And we still have the same mission statement. We cultivate leaders who thrive with trust, honor, integrity, valor, and evolving excellence. And it's something that is the basis to all we do. And a group of teachers started to talk about that, and we were wondering, is there a way that we could be an example to our students of that mission? And something that we started to discuss was, well, is there a way to form our own group that would take care of our contract and be able to do that, and also help foster relationships within our district? And we found that you're able to do that. And we went through the process that Max described. And we also discussed, why do we have a union? a couple things that a union does is that it provides legal protection, and it helps with the contract, obviously. And so those two things are pretty major. And we wanted to be able to, was there another way to do that besides the current situation that we had? And we found out that, yeah, we could use NWPE that for our legal advice, and then we could do our own contract work and with that. So we went through the process, like you said. It was a little bit interesting. The timeline is kind of funky. It went out into the summer, and we had to get a certain percentage of people's votes on that, and so that required us to do some phone calls and things during the summer to get teachers on board with that. But one thing that was mentioned when we were going through the process is that as soon as we did this, that we'd lose our contract, that everything would be gone. And that really is not the case at all. Our contract stayed intact. We were able to go through and change some things that we wanted to change, and continue to be protected. A lot of the contracts, when you start going into the WACs, for the law, Washington State law, they're backed by that. And so now what we have is our mission for the WTLC is that we cultivate high-achieving students by developing and maintaining positive, trusting professional relationships. And that's really what it's all about. We, whenever we go into any conversation, we meet with our administration once a month at least, and every conversation is a win-win. What's going to be, that's the attitude every time. What's going to be a win for our students, most importantly, that's number one. And then what can be a win for the district, and what can be a win for us. And so things like when we're talking about salary and personal days and all those different things, the district is interested in making it a win for our teachers as well, because they want to make it Waterville a place to be, a good place for our teachers. And we know that we're competing with other bigger schools with more resources than us, and so we have to be creative. But it works out pretty well. Some of the things, well, about dues, we have decided that it's $16 a month for our members. Anybody can choose to be a member or not be a member. We try to encourage people to be a member. Right now we have everybody on board. It is a smaller district, so I know some of you are from really, really big districts, but all 22 of us are on board with it. And what we do with our money is, because it's about relationships, one of the things we do is we have a scholarship committee that we make sure that we give away money to our students every year. We have a committee that works on professional dinners, and make sure that we have that available to our members and others who want to join us at the end of our year for a celebration of what we've done. We make sure that we have a committee that works with like sending birthday cards, and if somebody gets hurt or injured with something, we make sure that they get flowers and things like that. So it's our group is truly about the relationship, because if our relationship is strong between us as an administration and as a team of teachers, then that's what's best for students. Some of the things that we can be that I personally, I'm proud of with our district that we've been able to do, and I feel like it's part of it, a big part of it is because of the relationships that we have with our WTLC and the administration. Is as far as COVID, last year, as soon as it happened, as we were told that we were no longer able to be in the building, we were able to start servicing our students the next week immediately. So we only actually missed one day with our students, and then we were back online with them all. That's because of some pretty forward thinking as well on our administration part of making us a one-to-one school early on. But still, that was something that was pretty awesome. And the other thing that we've done is we have 100% of our students back in our building, 100% of the students who want to be back in our building right now. I'm a fourth grade teacher, and I have all my kids in that want to be in, as of today, I'm so excited to get 2 more students today that their grandma finally got the vaccine, and so they're back in. And we have things like our COVID leave that I know that on the federal side was expired, but we continued it as a district until all teachers have the opportunity to be vaccinated. Our district has worked very hard to make sure that it's actually to Friday, everybody has an opportunity to be vaccinated, which is awesome. And so that is something that personally I'm proud of, that we've done what's right by students and have them in the building as soon as possible. And then also another neat thing that we've put into place is the 4-day week. And that has, for a small district, we have to be creative because of our finances. It's just, it's the nature of the beast. And so one thing that we wanted to create is better professional development for our teachers. And what the 4-day week has provided is on 1 month of Friday that we negotiated in is PD Friday. And we have trainers come in, and it's been really beneficial for us. So that's been a neat addition for what we've been doing, and it shows how WTLC can work with administration to make things work. So overall, it's been a really good experience. It is, you know, the paradigm shift is that you're completely in control of what's happening, and teachers need to be pretty proactive. In, like, for example, when I and my colleague go in and meet with administration, I send out a survey asking, are there any concerns about, you know, what's going on? Is there anything that anybody needs any help with? And then those concerns are brought up and we discuss them. And same with our openers. You know, we have 2 openers a year with the admin and with us, and we go through a whole process that we've created together to make that work. And so, like I said, it's been a great thing for our students and for us, and it continues to work. So it is possible to have a local only.
Excellent. Thank you, Justin and Amy and Max. We're going to go over a few questions now. First of all, I want to address one thing I saw come up quite a bit in the comment section. People were saying that services provided by WEA for them were free, and clearly you're paying for those. That's what your dues are. So you're not getting free services. There was a question about getting the benefits after you opt out, the standard typical free rider question. Max, do you want to address that question? Are you going to opt out and still get all the benefits?
So this is it's a tricky issue, and the way that our state laws work, again, I mentioned this earlier, you know, once a union petitions for and is granted state certification as the exclusive bargaining agent, they're accepting the responsibility of representing everybody, including those who choose not to be members. Now, I would, as a matter of principle, I would happily work with WEA, and I think the Freedom Foundation would happily work with WEA or any union that would like to revisit that law and try to free unions of the obligation of representing non-members. That's a creation of state law, and there's no reason it has to be that way. But I'll note that in the 3 years now since the Janus decision was decided, I haven't heard any unions willing to take up the Freedom Foundation on that policy idea. Actually, if you go back before my time here at the foundation, that concept was something that the Freedom Foundation was supporting for quite some time. In short, it seems very likely that unions, including WEA, would rather maintain their ability to serve as the monopoly provider of workplace representation, even if it means having to represent some people who choose not to be members and not to pay. Now, one item on a somewhat related note, and I've seen some questions come up about this in the chat as well, questions about, can I support my local union but separate from WEA and NEA? And the challenge is NEA's unified dues structure. which means that when you accept membership in your local union, you are also accepting, by definition, membership in the WEA and the National Education Association. It's not possible to pick or choose which entities to be membership to have a membership with. You're either a member of all of them or you're a member of none of them. And so when you resign, your membership works the same way. You're not just canceling your membership with the Washington Education Association or the NEA. You're canceling your membership with the local union as well. Now, some folks really appreciate the work that the local union does, and if that's your position, then I'd say talk to your local union and see if they'd be willing to accept donation from you to support the work that they do on your behalf. If they don't want to accept it, that's up to them. But there's no legal reason that they couldn't accept a donation if you want to continue supporting your local's work. But I don't believe there would be a mechanism to formally remain a member just of the local union. So that's important to keep in mind.
There were a couple of questions about the size of the school district in Waterville. And I know there are several other examples. Maybe you can talk about Clark County, Nevada, or any other school districts when it comes to sizes of creating a local OMI. Yeah,
and it's a fair point. And as Justin mentioned, Waterville's a small district, 22 teachers. And I think I even saw some comments, that were basically saying, well, it sure sounds like what you're doing is functioning as a union. And that's exactly right. That's exactly what they're doing. The Waterville Teachers Leadership Council is a labor union. It just doesn't happen to be affiliated with a private national organization out in Washington, D.C. in Federal Way. And there is no size limit, and there's no inherent reason that model only works in a small district. Matt, a moment ago, mentioned the Clark County Education Association down in Nevada. Look it up. It's an interesting story. But a couple years back, the Clark County Education Association broke off from the National Teachers Union, disaffiliated, and for all practical intents and purposes, it's a local independent union. It just happens to be in the largest school district in the state of Nevada with thousands of teachers. So they're going outside the realm of public education. There are independent unions that represent groups of state employees here in Washington. There are independent unions that represent large bargaining units in the city of Seattle, Seattle City employees. So that the model may seem, you may not have heard as much about it, but there are examples in literally every area of public employment of large and small independent unions operating in the interests of their members. They just don't happen to be sending part of the dues money off to Washington, D.C. or New York City.
Right, and that is the title of our webinar tonight, Teacher Alternatives to WEA, and what happens when you opt out of the union. So those are different things. I know we had quite a few comments that I'm not going to address because they were talking about what happens when there isn't a union. And clearly we are talking about replacing your local union or your union with a local union, not getting rid of the union altogether. There was a question about politics. Oh, go ahead, Max.
Well, I had to, before I forget, Matt, I had a couple other items that I wanted to touch on that I saw come up in the chat box as well. Sure. A couple keen listeners noted that I mentioned earlier in my presentation, or I referenced Lilia Skelson Garcia as president of the NEA, and they pointed out correctly that the current NEA president is now Becky Pringle. However, in my defense, I was referencing the most recently filed financial report for the NEA, which lags about a year to 2 years behind what's current. So the most current financial report of the NEA covers, Lilia Skelson Garcia's salary being the highest paid NEA employee. I wanted to clarify that, but thank you for pointing it out. On the issue of political contributions, there were some questions as well. And this is an item that is very controversial. Oftentimes, unions have made claims for years that dues money is never spent on political activity. And there's a kernel of truth in that. federal election law does say that unions and corporations cannot contribute out of their general funds to candidates for federal office. That is correct. However, there are a host of elected officials in Washington State and throughout the country that have nothing to do with, that are not federal positions, that are not running for federal office, and are not governed by that federal law. And in the state of Washington, our state Supreme Court has recognized and acknowledged that there is no legal prohibition in the state of Washington that would prevent unions from using members' dues to make direct political contributions to candidates for state and local office, or direct contributions to ballot measures. And that happens regularly. Again, I mentioned a few examples for WEA, but a number of other unions here in Washington State do that as well. So it's true, there are voluntarily funded union-operated political funds. It is also true that in the case of WEA and many others, union dues can be and frequently are used to make political contributions. If anybody has questions about that or wants to interact a little bit more or get some documentation, I'm happy to have that conversation. We'll provide contact info that you can follow up with us at the end. And then one other thing, Matt, sorry to keep cutting you off here. I just didn't want to lose anything on my list. There were some questions about union membership and having to stay a member of WEA for a period of a year. And some folks have pointed out that they are aware of people who resigned and were able to get out more quickly than that. And that is both, I think, are largely correct. My understanding is that WEA's membership policies have changed somewhat in the last couple of years in the wake of the Janus versus AFSCME decision. It's my understanding, and if somebody out there has information to the contrary, please correct me, but it's my understanding that the current membership forms distributed by WEA, which maybe not everyone has signed, provide that you are agreeing to pay dues for the duration of the academic year, and that if you resign your union membership during the academic year, those deductions will not stop until the beginning of the next academic year. Now, just because that's what the form says doesn't mean that WEA has to or always will hold people to that. I have no insight into that process, but that's what the most recent version of the WEA's membership form provides. And again, you may not have signed that version, and WEA may choose not to hold you to the terms of that agreement, but that's something to be aware of. I think that's everything that I wanted to cover at the moment, Matt, so I'll kick it back over to you for other questions or comments.
Oh, that's great. You answered most of the ones that I had for you. Amy, would you like to come back on for a minute?
Sure. What you got for me?
So I've got one easy question for you, and then I know you've been answering a lot of people's questions. I thought you may want to respond to one or two of them publicly for everybody. It's up to you, but the easy one is, are you a teacher?
Currently, I am not a teacher. I am the regional membership director at NWPE. I have worked at the state level, the State Department of Education. I have worked at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas Center for Academic Outreach and Enrichment. I have worked at a private school in Las Vegas as well, and I have worked in the West Ada School District. So I have worked in a classroom, I have worked with school districts, I have worked with rural schools, and I have worked at the state level. So my sort of being and existing around education is in a variety of manner.
And did you have any questions that people were asking that you wanted to address? I know, again, you were going through and answering most of them directly in the chat, but if not, that's all right.
I have worked in a public school, I have worked in a private school, and like I said, my experience at UNLV, I worked with a variety of public schools there that we have worked with. I tried to answer a few of them, but some of them I think are just I think they're just prodding it, trying to, cause uproar or something. I'm not really sure what they're trying to get at, but
I tried to tell them if you're happy with your union, you should just stick with your union.
Yeah, exactly. I am not paid by Freedom Foundation. Our NWPE and AAE is a separate organization. I was simply invited to participate in the conversation because so many people are not aware that they have an option, and they have never been told about what those options are. So I was asked to participate, and I came on to share what NWPE has to offer for people who are looking for an alternative, that they still will have coverage. They can still have access to a discount program that provides them with supplementary insurance for their life insurance, their car insurance, their long-term care insurance, whatever, things that they're looking for, grants and scholarships that we provide, professional development opportunities that we have out there. So $16.50 a month, a couple gourmet coffees, and you're going to get a $2 million liability policy with direct access to legal services as you need them. So I'm just here, and if you're really happy with your union and they're a professional organization that's fulfilling your needs, then you're where you need to be. But if they're not, then I'm just want you to know that there's other choices available.
Yeah. Thanks, Amy. And Justin, before we close up, if you have any comments, you're welcome to jump back on. And Max, I'll give you one last chance since I know you've been scrolling through the chat.
I do see a comment about that. I said something about students under 16 can get a vaccine. That's not what I meant. No, the students haven't been vaccinated. The vaccines are, like you said in the comment there, are for our adult population. We didn't just open our school randomly, though. Our superintendent and administration worked tirelessly with our health district and cleared every protocol through our health district before allowing students in, and then trained us on all those protocols and hold us accountable for following those protocols, which is great. That's what's good for kids. It allows our students to be in our building. And so, yeah, the vaccines were not for our students as of yet.
Thanks, Justin. Well, we're coming up on an hour, and that was my goal, 45 minutes to an hour. So thanks, everyone, for joining us. And thanks, Max and Amy and Justin, for joining me and sharing the information with everyone. Have a good night.